that you could imagine being like and making a guitar yourself, or doing some other craft that is new and a change of pace for you. So we're going to start off with just a little bit of Q&A between me and David, and then we'll turn it over to David to tell you how to make a guitar. But first, David, let me just start with this question, which is, how did you get connected with the Jewish Center and us?
Lynn asked me to do this. I've known Lynn probably for what, 40 some odd years. Actually met her through Barbara and Kevin, and Kevin Scott, and Barbara's in this meeting. We met Barbara and Kevin on our honeymoon in Nova Scotia. And we actually ended up renting an apartment from Lynn's folks in Rutherford. So that was about 40 years ago or so, and just known her ever since.
Great. Well, we're a long association. And you have not had a career in music or guitar making, have you?
Oh, no, not at all. No, I mostly been a journalist and a book editor. I started out as a newspaper reporter. As a matter of fact, I worked at the Princeton Packet. I grew up in Kendall Park. Later in my career, I was an editor of how-to books. So, I got into like woodworking and building furniture and stuff like that. So I've always sort of combined my interest in writing and building, through most of my life.
And you've played music since you were a kid.
Yeah, I've always had a guitar around. And actually, I took lessons for about a year when I was 8 years old. And I took lessons for about 7 years when I was 50 to 57. Before the pandemic hit, I enjoyed doing like open mics and playing with folks and, very, very amateur, kind of thing.
So I recall from our conversation a couple of weeks ago, there's a defining moment when you kind of got into woodworking, and I was wondering if you'd share that story about the gift of a large piece of wood that you received.
Oh yeah, that was we were living in Frenchtown, New Jersey. Actually, we had rented an apartment in a loft building in Frenchtown, and when we rented the apartment, it was not yet completed. And the carpenter who owned the building, or his brother owned it, actually said to us, "Oh, you're writers, I'll build you some bookcases over here." He sort of custom made the apartment for our interests, which was really kind of unique since we were renters. And so we became friends, and we had really cheap rent because underneath us, directly underneath, was a woodworking shop. And it was understood that if they had a deadline, they would, work during the night. We'd be hearing certain, table saws screaming and all that kind of stuff. And so we kind of got friends with them too. And this guy who owned the building, Sarge, his name was, he gave me a piece of a beam, an old beam out of a building. And I just got a chisel and carved it into a freeform sculpture. So that was sort of the first tool that I used.
Like anyone would.
Yeah.
And so it's a bit of a step from a giant beam to a guitar. When did you take that step?
Well, as I mentioned, I've done some woodworking, and I've always enjoyed working in wood, built a lot of furniture in my house, that kind of thing. And one day, a few years ago, Beth and I we went to a concert at the, it was I forget what exactly it's called, but there's like a boat building school, and the Hudson's Boat Building School. I think it's outside it's in Kingston, I think. And I guess at intermission or after the concert, we were wandering around, and there was this guy doing a guitar building class. And that really piqued my interest. I'd always sort of, I've always played this instrument and enjoyed tucking it under my arm and got a lot of pleasure out of it all these years, but, never really understood that much about, how it's made up or what it is, and So I became kind of curious about it, and I took that course, which was an 8-week course, and it was kind of sort of a kit. You know, all the machine work was done, and we did some of the carving, the braces and the neck and stuff. And it was a great overview of how a guitar goes together. So that was my first guitar. And then, you know, I was pretty busy after that, you know, freelance and stuff. And when COVID hit and I became kind of unbusy, I said, you know, this is a great opportunity to pursue this a little bit more. So I actually signed up for I took an online, a 20-hour course that I bought online, which was actually quite excellent. You know, it showed things in a lot of great detail. And that combined with the, you know, kit guitar I had done and, you know, my, you know, having some facility already with tools, I was able to produce guitar number 2. And now I'm working on guitar number 3.
So this is kind of like the medical school rule of thumb: see one, do one, teach one. So now we're.
I guess so. Yeah. So it's important to understand that I am by no means an accomplished luthier. You know, I'm really kind of just starting out and enjoying this. So, but I'm happy to share, you know, what I've found and what I love about it.
Great. Well, that is a terrific background. And with that, I just suggest that we turn it over to you in the presentation. And
Okay.
folks, any questions that you may have, you can put them into the chat, and I'll either ask them or turn it over to you to ask the questions yourself. So with that, David, tell us how to make it.
Okay. So I assume you can see the screen I'm sharing?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So this is kind of what you start out with. I mail ordered, they're called sets. So you have like a book match set. This is the back, 2 pieces that will comprise the back of a guitar. And I kind of like, you know, you actually online see the pictures of the sets and you can pick out a set that you like. And I really like that this one, I like the grain pattern and the way the book matches came together in the middle there. So I chose this. And then you also get a set of for the front, so the back here, this happens to be Indian rosewood, and the front was what am I trying to say? For some reason I can't think of the wood, not cedar. It'll come to me. Anyway, so you have these 2 sets, and that's just an example of the back, so you can see it. And here they are. It's a spruce, Adirondack spruce, actually, is what this one is. So here's kind of, I've glued together the 2 sets and kind of roughly cut out the shape of the guitar. And you do this from a plan. You kind of you buy a plan and you kind of get the shape off the plan. So that's that. And please, if anybody has any questions anywhere along the way, just jump in. So here is, I've done the rosette. The rosette is this round circle around the hole. And that's largely a decorative thing. This is a very simple one. It was the first one that I inlaid, so I kept it kind of simple. It's rosewood, but it also helps to keep this kind of weak area grain around the hole from cracking. So it has a practical use as well. And it just happens to be set on top of what you see here in the middle happens to be set on the back. That's already got its braces in place, which you'll see in the next slide here. So this is not that guitar. This is actually the guitar I'm working on now. It's a different shape. It's a dreadnought shape. It's a larger body, but this kind of shows what's going on inside, which is the braces. And the whole idea of a guitar is, they say that the best guitars, the finest guitars, are just on the verge of destroying themselves, because you've got 2 diametrically opposed goals here. One is you want the top to be as loose and flexible as possible so it can vibrate, and the back and sides, but to a lesser degree. But it has to be strong enough to withstand about 180 pounds of pressure. But see, this is the, on the other side of this is going to be the bridge, which has the holes that the strings are, are in. And that's about 180 pounds of pull on there. So the trick is to come up with a bracing system that maximizes the flexibility while still, being strong enough, and also allows different tones throughout the piece of wood. So what you do, and I don't really know how to do this yet, I'm just really learning, I'm more working from plans, but it becomes more intuitive, the carving of the braces, because you kind of hold the, I got it right here, kind of hold this thing up and kind of tap on it and try to get good different notes out of it. And then you kind of keep carving the braces until you think, oh, that's, sounds pretty good. I don't know what the hell I'm listening for yet.
David, we have a couple of questions about this. One is, does the hole have to be a standard size?
Does the hole have to be a standard? No. The hole, there's no, I mean, this is basically, both of these designs are basically after Martin style guitars. But you may have seen guitars that have F holes, or even holes in different positions, different size holes. There's all kinds of different designs. Now, one of the interesting things about the braces is the strength comes more from the height than the width. And the more narrow it is, the more vibration. So you try to maximize that by kind of making a pyramid shape in the braces. And these points that you see here, where it's like wider, these are called scallop braces. So they have these like scallops in them. And these kind of create different note points. So that's pretty much, and this is called X bracing. It was developed by the Martin Guitar Company, probably 100 years ago. And there are other styles of bracing that are also done, fan bracing, different things. But so that's basically that. Any questions about that?
A couple. So let me just say,
Okay.
Peter Smith had one.
Okay.
Peter, do you want to ask that?
Sorry, yes. How thick are the sets? How thick is the wood?
Okay. The approximately, and this is another thing that you kind of flex because every piece of wood is a little different, but generally you want about 85 to 70 thousandths of an inch for the front and the backs. Yeah. So it's very important to have a caliper, and if you're half blind like me, a digital caliper. So, you'll see in another slide, the way I get them to that thickness is I have a homemade thickness sander that I've found plans for online and built out of scrap wood and a motor and some things like that. So this is the back, which has obviously simpler bracing. This piece in the middle here, the center strip, is interesting because actually you would think the grain runs along the length of something, but in this case, the grain runs this way across, so it kind of stitches it together, stitches the back together. So that's that. Oops, is this the next slide?
What is the bracing made of?
Spruce usually, sometimes basswood, a light, strong softwood.
And you cut that yourself?
Yeah.
Wait.
So you get a block of wood, and actually you split off to see how the grain's going to go, and then you could cut them on a saw. And one of the main things is that these are quarter sawn, which means that the grain actually goes up and down, straight up and down in relation to the, I guess you would say it's perpendicular to the surface, and that's the strongest way a piece of wood can be. The other thing about the braces, and you'll see how I do this in a little while, is that the braces actually have a little bit of a radius on the bottom of them. The radius in this case for the backs is 20 feet, a radius of 20 feet, and the top is a radius of 28. So it's a little 28 feet, a little more gentle. So when you actually glue that thin top and bottom to the braces, you create a radius on the bottom and the top of the guitar, because the guitar is not flat. It's actually got a radius on the top and the bottom.
Can I ask another question? Is there an
Sure.
is it intentional that you put the brace in the center over the two pieces so that they stay together?
You're talking about this piece here?
Yeah.
Yes, that center strip.
Right.
It would stay together without it, but it's kind of an insurance against cracking or that joint coming apart. So that is the purpose of it, to keep the joint from coming apart.
Thank you.
And there was one other question, David, about what kind of glue you use.
Wood glue, tight bond mostly. For everything you've seen I do so far. There's some places where I actually use like a crazy glue which comes in different thicknesses. Like some of it is water thin, and I'll show you why. I'll tell you later why that comes in handy. But for this, it's just wood glue, like you would use for furniture or anything else. Now, this is a photo that my grandson Ethan took yesterday while he was helping me bend the sides for guitar number 3. And basically, you have these sides that are cut to a certain shape, and they've been thicknessed to a certain thickness, also about 7 or 8 thousandths of an inch. And you soak them in the bathtub in hot water for 15 minutes or so, each side. And then what you see sticking up here is a hot iron. And so I spritz it, a hot iron. And over here you'll see a better picture of this later, but this is the form. And I'm trying to shape it to fit this form. This little table here is an idea I came up with after trying my first attempt at bending sides, because it's very important when you're bending the sides that you keep it completely parallel to that. You don't twist it like this at all, otherwise you wind up with a twist in the side. And concentrating on that, in addition to trying to concentrate on getting the shape that I'm after, was pretty tough. So it occurred to me that if I made this table, I could hold it down on the table, and that would automatically keep it parallel. Although in the case of the dreadnought I'm making now, they're cut to a taper, so it doesn't quite work that way. But in any case, but it also allows me to finalize the shape by, once the thing is bent almost to shape, I can actually put it in the form and press it against the iron to get it to its final shape. So that's how the sides get their shape. Thank you, Ethan, for taking the photo.
You want to say hi, Ethan? Here's Ethan.
Hi, Ethan.
Yeah.
And this photo shows now the sides have been bent, and this is the form. So it's a homemade form, and it has these sort of clamp things that hold the sides in and keep them in their shape. And what I'm doing right here is gluing on the tail block. So it's a block of wood that goes here. There's also a heel block, which I think is you see in the next slide. Okay, yep. So here's this is the tail block and the heel block. Now, because the top and bottom are radiused, the edges of the top and bottom have to be at that same radius, so that when the sides come, they will meet them flat, And the way you achieve that is you have this thing called a radius dish. So this circular thing that's underneath here, you can kind of see it defined here. It has sandpaper on it. And I have two of them, one for the radius of the top, one for the radius of the back. And what you actually do is take the whole thing with the body in the form like this, and you move it back and forth on that dish, and that creates that radius on the edges. That dish is also used to get that radius on the braces that I showed you before.
David, David, those things look like stretchers. Do you have to make
Stretchers, that's what they are.
do you have to make them to, yourself so that they fit the form
Yeah.
properly?
Yeah, you can buy them.
Everything that you're doing here on your own, basically by yourself, to fit in with everything else that you're making.
Yeah, you have to make a lot of jigs and stuff. So this first guitar took like 6 or 7 months just because I spent so much time making the different jigs and things that I needed to make it.
But if you make a different shaped guitar, then you have to make different jigs, right?
Yeah, well, you have to make a different form. Some of the jigs still apply. And I did make a different form. In fact, you could probably see it right. I don't know if you could see it right here. I can't really tell, but that's for the Dreadnought. This was an OM style that you see here in the photo. It has it's a smaller guitar with a more narrow waist than the Dreadnought shape. So yeah, you need two different forms. So now we've got both blocks on, and we've radiused the edges. Now, before you put the top and bottom on, now here, yes, those are clothespins. High-tech method here. What you see over here, these strips, those are called kerfing. And a kerf is a saw cut in a piece of wood. And if you put a lot of evenly spaced kerfs in a piece of wood, now that piece of wood becomes very flexible. And that's put on the top and bottom of the guitar just to give more gluing surface and strength. And you'll see that in the next slide here. So here's the kerfing, all glued in place all the way around. And what I'm doing here is gluing in, these are little side braces that I'm putting in. So that's that. And now this crazy contraption. Oh, before I get to that, here's my, I'm very proud of my sanding machine back here, which has a motor and a revolving disc and a table that goes up. Anyway, so that's that. This is called a go-bar deck. And it's a way of clamping without using a whole bunch of clamps. It's actually a very ancient method, although this is a little updated because these are, they used to use pieces of flexible wood. These are actually plexiglass bars here. And what I'm doing here is you can see down here, this is the radius dish for the top. So the top's not on yet, but the body and the form are placed on top of that. So now they're sitting on top of the radius dish. And then the top is positioned in place. And then all these flexible sticks are put in place to hold the top down. You can see I didn't have quite enough. I actually did use a few pieces of wood here. And I just made this out of like plywood and some, a black pipe, like plumber's black pipe. Anybody have any questions? Am I making any sense?
What is this trying to do?
What is it trying to do?
Yeah, wait, are you sanding it?
No. This is gluing the top. This is gluing the back in place. So the body is in there. The top, which is still rough and oversized, is glued on.
Oh,
And then with glue, you have to have clamps, with wood glue. So these are actually acting as clamps
oh.
all the way around to attach the back. And this is sort of the, and how you come up with that. Excuse me. This is called the headstock, which is where the tuners are, at the end. So this is the roughed out neck. And when you make the neck, you can make it out of one piece, but then you need a 3-inch thick piece of wood because, the heel, which you see down here, which is the place where it meets the body of the guitar, that's like 3 inches. And then the headstock is curved back. So you need a big chunk of wood. Also, this actual point right here gets weak because the grain changes direction if you make it out of one piece of wood. So what's often done and what I do is it's called a scarf joint. You have one piece of wood and you make this cut, like a 15-degree cut. Then you turn the piece over and then they're joined together. Like right here, you can't really see it, but it's joined together there. And then you stack up 3 pieces to make the heel, which will later be carved into the heel. And this groove you see here is something called a truss rod will go in there. And that's an adjustable rod. It's actually 2 pieces. I could probably show you one. No, I won't take the time to dig it up. Oh, I can see it right over here. One sec.
David,
So
we have an important question for you,
Yes.
which is, do you want Beth Callett to bring a glass of water out to the shop for you?
Oh, that's very nice of her to offer. No, I'll be fine. Thanks, Beth.
And then a follow-up, which is what kind of metal is used in your truss rods?
Oh, well, this is a truss rod. It's something I buy. This happens to have the adjustment Allen wrench attached to it, so I won't lose it. But basically, this is kind of an interesting thing. It's made out of steel, and it has 2 parts. And this will be buried in the guitar. And you'll take you'll go in the body of the guitar, and you'll be able to reach this in the neck. And this puts a bow. If you twist this thing, it tightens up one of these rods and makes it stick out and actually creates a bow. And it can go in either direction. So that helps you adjust the bow of the neck, which is a really important aspect.
Can we see this? I'm just seeing a picture of the neck itself right now.
I'm showing you, you have to look in the picture of me. Because
Okay,
I don't
all right.
actually have a photo of this. I'm showing you an actual one. Can you see that?
Working on it.
What is its function?
It's not that exciting. It's just,
What is its function?
well, you need, it adjusts the neck, like it affects the action of the play, how high the strings are off the neck. And also you want a little bow in the neck for reasons that are kind of complicated and, but a very slight bow that you want to put into the neck. And it really what it does, it resists the tension of the strings pulling towards pulling this way. Like if you look, if that was the neck, strings are going that way. They want to pull the neck this way, and it makes it stronger and resists that and lets you adjust that bow that happens in there. I don't know if I'm explaining that too well, but
You are.
okay. So this here I'm kind of showing you the evolution of the headstock. And a headstock can be any shape you want, within reason, of course. Some of them are pretty fancy, and there's the traditional Martin headstock, which is just sort of a paddle shaped. and I wanted to do something pretty simple, like a Martin paddle, but I wanted something that said, this is not a Martin guitar. So this shows what I drew here. And then you make a, like a thin template, which you can kind of shape. It's easy to shape. And then you kind of, with double stick tape, attach that to a piece of plywood or a piece of, this case, MDF material. And then you on a router table with a flush trimming bit, you can cut out that shape. And now you have a bigger pattern that you can use. And then you use that on the router table to finally cut the shape of the headstock. So here's my headstock shape. These are like the little holes where eventually these will become bigger holes for the tuners. So this shows you the guitar with the top and bottom still rough shaped on the body. One thing I didn't mention right here, this is the name of this is now flown out of my brain, but it's like a kind of a wedge shaped, the end wedge, I guess they call it. It's a wedge shaped piece that kind of finishes the joint between, at the bottom of the guitar. And the main reason it's wedge shaped is that makes it a lot easier to fit it in, because you can wedge it till it fits. Sometimes they're different colors, different woods. I chose to use the same wood and to just define it with these little strips of maple here. So I'm not showing routing it, but here it is with the, I've run kind of just the same way a carpenter would, if you've ever had countertops put in, like laminate countertops, they have a little laminate trimmer and it goes around with a bearing and it trims everything flush. So I did that on the top and bottom here. And what you're seeing there, this discoloration, that's just some shellac that I put on there to help prevent the top from splitting out while I was routing it. Oh, so the next step after this is putting in what's called the binding and the purfling, which is the edge treatment. And I said to myself, I'm going to do this myself by hand. And I carefully, cut it out by hand and everything, totally screwed it up. So I called on a fellow named Bill Sterling, who was the guy who taught that course that I took. And Bill has this fancy machine here that to cut the channels for the binding and the purfling. And I'll show you what those channels are in a minute. But what makes it tricky is you can't just run a router on the top of the top and the bottom. Can anybody guess why that is? Has to do with something I mentioned earlier. Nope. It's because the top and bottom have a radius on them and the router would tilt and you wouldn't get an even a channel going around. So this thing actually suspends the router in the air, so you don't have to worry about that and you can just run it around. So he fixed it up for me. This isn't my guitar, he's doing another guy's. So this shows what you see here is this is called the purfling. This strip here where my cursor is, it's a thin, less deep strip that you see from the front of the guitar. And then you have another piece called the binding, which goes in a deeper channel that covers the purfling and defines the side and the top of the guitar. I'm sorry?
No,
Somebody say something? Oh,
no, there was a beep, the loud beep. I didn't know what that was.
okay. And here, actually, I'm in the process of gluing it on. And this is a special stretchy tape that as you put the glue in, you can use this tape to clamp it down. And that's where I actually use, one method of doing it is to put glue on and clamp it down. Another way is to put all this tape on and then use water thin crazy glue and just wick it in and then take the tape off and then you're all set. That's what I did in this case. So here it is with the binding and the purfling. Now you notice the binding has this little line. That's a little strip of maple that comes already attached to the binding. So that's it just adds a nice little detail. So since excuse me, since I was doing that, maybe I could use some water, Beth. Since I was doing that, that's what inspired me to do the wedge like this. So it came out pretty good, you know, in the photo anyway. It's not perfect. Like you could see here, I had to do a little filling, but it was, you know, first time I did it with the help from, and next time, hopefully it'll come out better. Here I'm just gluing the fretboard onto the neck. So the fretboard is a separate piece from the neck that the frets are embedded into. And it has grooves at the proper intervals for the frets to create the different notes. Now, I chose to purchase the fretboard with those grooves already in it because it cost about 15 bucks. And to get it all set up to make those grooves would have run me $200 or $300, you know, and I figured, there's not that much skill involved in it. So I'll just, for now, just buy it like that. So, and you can see here, we've already made the holes for the tuners. And this slot here is where the nut will go eventually. The nut is where the strings pass over little grooves to go to the tuners. And here I am carving, this is carving the neck. Oh, thank you, Beth. One very cool thing I picked up from that course I took was, thanks so much. I got a whole picture here. Give me a minute. Thanks, Beth. I thought this was very clever. What you do is, you know, the neck is at different thicknesses near the headstock than it is, and it gets thicker as it gets towards the heel. So what you do is you make a groove at two predetermined spots all the way across at the depth that you want it to be, the thickness, and then you start carving. And you make sure that you keep an even oval as you're carving until you carve those ovals away. And that way, you know, the sides are coming to the same shape. And it works great. And then, of course, one of the nice things about carving your own neck is you can kind of feel it and get the neck that you really like as a guitarist. So that's, and these are basically like cheese graters for carving. They work great. And this thing is this is just basically a stand that I made, and it just uses dowels to hold the neck by putting the dowels in the holes for the tuners, and then it's clamped over on this end, and it just gives you really good access to the whole neck while you're carving. And this just shows the heel, and actually. Here you can see the shapes. These are the blocks, what were originally the 3 blocks. You can see these lines. Keeping an eye on those and keeping them even helps you get an even heel as well. This is a real Rube Goldberg setup here. What I'm doing here is the fretboard also has a radius on it. in this case, a 16-inch radius. And there are different radiuses from, you know, nothing on classical guitars to 20-inch radius. And they all have different advantages. This, you know, it's always a trade-off depending on your style of playing. Greater radiuses are better for like doing bar chords. Lesser radiuses are better for lead guitar players. And so what you see here is this black thing here is a radius sanding bar. It's an aluminum bar that has a 16-inch radius on the bottom across its width. And you attach sandpaper to the bottom of it. And then you rub it back and forth on the neck until you know, it takes on the whole radius. And what I do is, you can sort of see here this bluish color here. That's chalk. Before doing that, I chalk up the whole neck. So I'll be able to see when all that chalk is gone, I'll know I've created the whole radius. I also, so that I don't like tip it at all, I put this fence here. This piece of wood acts like a fence. So I know I'm going against that fence. It's always gonna be in the same position, that bar, as I use it. And the reason the body is covered with plastic here, actually it's covered with wax paper. And then what you see set up here is my shop vac put on blow, because it's very important not to get any of this rosewood dust on the spruce top, because you can't get it out, and it just, you know, never looks right. If it gets embedded in there, you can't get it out. So this is all just a precaution to keep that sanding dust off the top. So this is blowing air, and it just makes sure it doesn't get embedded. So that's that whole Rube Goldberg thing there. So here we are. We've got the frets put in, and these little dots, they're pretty easy to put in. You drill a little hole, you can buy these little dots, glue them in. This is the nut here, hasn't been carved yet. Over here, I'm gluing down this is a cool little clamping device. That's clamping down the bridge that's being glued to the body. Now, here is the finished guitar, except it's not finished. There's no finish on it. So what you do is, not everybody does this, but what I do, what I was instructed to do, is before putting any finish on, you know, put the tuners on, set up the nut, and this is the bridge, and this white piece here is called the saddle. And both of those can be carved to be exactly the height you want, and the action you want. Excuse me. So you get it all set up, and sometimes you even do a little carving on the neck at this point, because you play it a bit and you see, maybe I want this neck a little thinner here, or however you might want it. When you're satisfied that everything is set up right, you take all that stuff off, and then you can finish the guitar, in which I just kind of hang it up. And what the finish I use is called True Oil. It's intended for gun stocks, and I used it gets about 18 coats on the body, and I think I used about 15 coats on the top and the neck. And you just kind of make like it's like French polishing. You make a little wad, and you just rub a very thin coat on, and you can do that every 2 hours, and it takes about 3 days. And finally, you get a really shiny, nice finish on it.
David, we have a question about how you precisely locate where to put the bridge.
How do you precisely locate where to put the bridge? Excellent question. the distance, the bridge needs to be, I'll say the saddle, which is set in the bridge, needs to be exactly the same distance from the 12th fret, which is the octave, as the 12th fret is from the nut. Now you can do that by measuring, or you could buy one of these things. If you can see this, if you can see this thing, but basically what this is, this is an adjustable. I have it adjusted where I want it. So you can put this part of it has a little groove in it, and you can put that over the 12th fret. And then this part has two little adjustable pointy things in it with set screws. And you can, and there's something called compensation, okay? So it's not exactly the same distance. If you look at a guitar, you'll notice that there's a little slant to the saddle. And that's for compensation, and I won't really go into that, but it has to do with getting the guitar into tune, which, by the way, a little known secret is a guitar can never totally be in tune. It's you can't tell the difference, but it can never really be in tune. But basically, you could set this where the nut is, and then you flip it around, and then it tells you exactly where you want that saddle to be. And then you can pin it down there, and that's where you glue it. Does that answer the question? Basically, it's got to be the same distance from the 12th fret as the nut is. That's why if anybody plays guitar, if you can get a harmonic, the strongest harmonic is on the 12th fret. So that's basically it. That's all the slides I have. Any questions about anything?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
How do you string the guitar?
How do you string it?
Yes.
Well, maybe I'll show you in this slide here. Okay, so these, what I didn't talk about was making these holes in the bridge, okay, which are made for these little pegs that go in. So you put the string in the hole, and the peg holds it in place. Then you just put it through a little hole in your tuners, and then you tune it up, and you're in business.
Rick Strauss had a question for you.
Oh, how long did this whole guitar take?
Well, this guitar, because of all the jig building, and if you include building that sanding thing, I want to say it probably took about 8 months, 9 months. Whereas the next one will probably take 2 or 3 months if I don't have a whole lot else to do. But that's, so it gets quicker once you have all your jigs and stuff and you're getting a better idea of what you're doing. But, one of the nice things about this is there's no time limits. So this is the live finished guitar here.
So David, how does it feel to play that guitar versus any other guitar you might have?
Well, this is the best guitar that was ever made. No, it's very satisfying. It's like, I'll play it for you a little bit. That's it, guitar number 2.
How is guitar number 2 different from guitar number 1?
Well, it's interesting. Guitar number 1 was made out of cherry wood mostly. I can tell a little difference in the tone. I like them both. This one wound up with a little bit wider neck, so they play a little differently. It's nice for fingerstyle, this one, because the neck is a little wider. In some ways, the first one, some of the finishing is a little better. Like the Rosette is a little more professionally done because I didn't do the Rosette. Each guitar has its different personality. And what I think would be, I never expect to make a living doing this or anything like that, but I'd really love the opportunity to, make an affordable guitar for someone that's really to their playing style, because that's what's fun about it. Because, you can change parameters like the width of the neck, the height of the strings, the shape of the body, how big are your hands, how big is your body, what style do you like to play most, will affect the action that you want, how high the string should be, things like that. Of course, you can buy different commercial guitars that have different characteristics, but it's often hard to find one that has all the things exactly that you're looking for. So that's kind of the fun thing.
And for guitar 3, what is how do you want that one to be different?
Well, guitar 3 is a dreadnought style guitar, so that'll probably be a little bassier. I've had a dreadnoughts before, and they're louder. They tend to be a little bassier. They're not quite as balanced as the OM style. I've really come to appreciate the OM style shape, for my personal playing. But I want to try making something different. So, and this one will be walnut. I'm trying to move towards using domestic hardwoods as much as possible, as opposed to imported hardwoods, just because they sound great, and it just seems like a kind of a socially responsible thing to do, instead of rainforest woods.
Are any of the guitars solid pieces of wood where the front is a solid piece and the back is a solid piece?
Yeah, they all are. They both are. They're all 3 that I've made. Yeah, that I'm working on. You can get guitars that are. Oh, well, you mean just one piece?
One piece.
Pretty rare, because to find a piece that big, that wide, I mean, that's pretty wide already. That's 18 inches. Is pretty hard to do. Plus, the book match looks pretty cool.
Oh.
And in the front, it's very hard to see where the seam. I mean, you really can't see where the 2 pieces come together if it's well done, because the grain is straight and it just disappears. So it's I've never seen a guitar made out of just one piece. In fact, some backs are made out of 3 pieces.
Oh, wow.
As wood.
And what is the current price range of guitars?
Well, it's interesting. Guitars that you can buy in the store, they've gotten, you can get, due to technology and machinery used to automate making guitars, they make really good guitars for $500 or $600. If you were to buy, oh, excuse me. If you were to buy from say a well-known luthier, you're probably starting at around $6,000. You can get really nice commercial guitars. High end is like 3,000, 4,000. So it's quite a range. But I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, have you ever planned to sell any guitar, to sell any of your guitars that you've made?
Well, so far I've only made 2 and I'm working on the 3rd. But yes, I would hope, I would be very happy to sell a guitar.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
yeah. You know, they wouldn't be anywhere near $6,000, obviously, because I'm not an established luthier. And at this point, I mean, the first guitar, if I do sell guitars, the first ones I would sell would not be profitable at all, because, you know, if you figure it takes, you know, even if it only takes 2 or 3 months to make a guitar and you sell it for a couple $1,000s and you put $500 worth of material into it, not a lot of profit there. But, you know, it would be more for the experience of building something for somebody's, you know, what they were looking for, and, you know, and starting out. Like I said, I never expect to make a living at this, but it's more a labor of love.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else who had a question for David?
That's it.
Well, I want to thank you so much, David, for that. It's incredibly instructive and makes me want to go out and make something. I'm not sure a guitar, but
Yeah. Well, see, I think, you know, and I think that's a, you know, interesting point, because, you know, here I am, I'm what, you know, 66 years old, starting to make guitars. You know, today it's really, I mean, if it was 20 years ago, you'd really have to go to school to, you know, or study with a luthier, you know, but now there's so much stuff available online that's really, it's actually very good, or courses that you can buy. I mean, here was a, you know, 20 hours of video that were so excellent that, you know, and the guy supports it with a, you know, forums and that kind of stuff, that you really, whatever it is you want to do, you want to do metalworking or whatever, I mean, you really can do it. And, you know, I'm always interested when people say, oh, you're so talented, you know, you could do that, you have a talent, you know. I don't really see it so much as a talent as a desire. You know, I think desire and craftsmanship is much more important than any particular talent. Because if you really want to do something, you know, you'll do it, you know, and sure, practice, perseverance, you know, all that kind of stuff. I don't know about talent so much. Maybe some people can take it on easier than other people, but I think really you could do anything you really want to.
Well, that's a great lesson and a great message. Thank you so much for being with us, David. Lynn, did you want to have any final words before?
No, I just wanted to say thank you to both of you. Thank you, David. I'm glad that I asked you to do this. I'm glad you started talking about it over a meal one day, and I thought, you know, there'd be some interest. It's something totally different. And
What meal? You didn't give me a meal.
what?
You didn't give
I
me a
didn't
meal.
give you a meal. No, Barbara and Kevin gave you a meal.
Yeah,
I
it's
know, I
probably
was
barbecue.
there. But you know, it's interesting to me how many different things you had to kind of invent along the way in order to make, you know, to get to what you needed, to get done what you needed to do.
Yeah, and I
So-
didn't invent a lot of it, and that's the beauty of it. You know, you go online, you find 6 different ideas for how you might, you know, thickness this or do that or this. I mean, that thickness sander, somebody, you know, just made their plans available for free online, you know.
Right.
You know, a lot of, there must be probably 100 guys who've made that sander, you know. So it's, yeah, it's all out there. And I want to thank you guys thanks Lynn for inviting me, and Nat for agreeing to moderate this. And thanks to everybody who came and was interested.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Thank you to all the attendees. Thank you,
Thank you.
David.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Okay, we're all done.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Night.
Take care. Good night.